Aloha! Welcome to the first episode of the 9th series of the Temple of Surf, the podcast. Today with us from the shores of Hawaii is surfboard shaper Tom Parrish. We discuss with him about his remarkable experience in hand-shaping boards, surfers, and much more. Hello, Mr. Parrish. Welcome to the show. Where are you today?
Hello, Alessandro. Aloha. I'm in the French Alps at a place called Val Thorens.
Not bad, not bad. It's imagine there is snow over there. This is the right season for Europe to ski. So I hope it's not too cold, but it's a good place to be, definitely. So.
Yeah, it really is. It's just an incredibly beautiful place.
Fantastic. So I'm so excited for today's interview. So there are a lot of things that I would like to ask you, but I start with the same question that I ask to everyone on the show. In your opinion, what is the most important thing in surfing?
I would say the short answer is surfing only for the love of surfing, and not doing anything to make the surf more crowded. I had a really dear friend. He was my glasser, a guy named Bosco Burns. One time he told me when he finally showed me a secret spot that he'd been surfing alone for many years. He said, never bring anyone, never tell anyone. So that really was important to me. And the longer answer is that we all have these kind of deeply held convictions on what surfing is and what it should be. It seems like in large part that comes from when you started surfing. Our values and our perceptions are sort of molded from that point on. At least I think so. Before the proliferation of surf contests, surfing was about solitude and communing with nature and the preservation of the pristine coastline and not being part of what was then called the establishment. Now it seems like contest results are the only measure of worth. It's like, it's just things change, I guess. And it seems like money and greed have gone a long way toward ruining what was surfing to me. So for a minute, let's just think about the premise behind surf contests. Denying the public use of their own beaches in hopes of attracting more people to the lineups, just for starters. Then let this entitled small group have the public's waves to themselves and pay them for doing that to us. And, in the end, this model has worked pretty well for the exploiters. Surf spots are more crowded than ever, and there are more and more contests. It may be what the promoters and the contestants wanted, but to me, it isn't what real surfers wanted. What is that saying? Don't poop where you eat. I think that applies here. The words public interest have gone by the wayside and greed rules like it does everywhere else in society. Surfers used to take pride in being different and living a minimal lifestyle. Now we seem to strive to be just like all the worst parts of the human condition. Then you get to the judging part, Judging what used to be an art or dance form is completely subjective. The judging criteria has the effect of making all these guys and girls try to do the same thing, surf the same way to get points or credit. It looks so forced and exaggerated, distorted and frantic, instead of subtle and stylish and relaxed and individual. Maybe this is just my perspective because I was around before there were contests. So when you see everyone else trying to copy that, you realize how far away we've gotten from beautiful surfing. It used to be do something hard and make it look easy. Now it looks like it's do something hard and make it look like you're having a seizure. It's ridiculous. And some people might say integrity and truth are things that used to be important to real surfers. I used to have this feeling that what I witnessed and vividly remember was the truth. There was no maybe, that was the truth. But with the advent of social media and the disappearance of accountability, it's taught me that I don't think there is any such thing as the truth. We all seem to have our own truths. And most of social media are people consciously or unconsciously trying to recreate the truth to improve their imagined stature. In over 60 years of being involved with surfing, I think the most disheartening thing has been to see the dilution of values that used to make surfing something unique and beautiful. And of course, the degradation of the ocean and the planet. Like, think in terms of the big picture. When you're a so called professional surfer, it doesn't, but it should come with responsibilities. For example, so called professional surfers should refuse the surfing contest where the public is excluded from using their own beaches. That's such a basic premise. You know, you should never deny the public from something that's theirs. The sacred premise of the public interest is that that interest is for everyone to share and enjoy, not something that you sell or rent for private profiteering. Once you allow private commercial endeavors to override the public interest, you're by definition making some kind of dishonorable concession that harms the public. And then, if there's ever a time when these so-called professional surfers are surfing not in a contest, they should set the example of being considerate and sharing in the lineups. Instead, most of them have this perception of self importance, like it's fine if there are pigs in the water. That's unprofessional. And not to get too far off the subject, but to me, no so-called professional should call themselves a board maker or offer a line of boards if they don't actually work on boards. This just gets back to the idea of truth and integrity. This idea that because you have a good contest result gives you credibility as a board maker is ludicrous. Actual board makers have a really hard time just making ends meet. And when guys who only spend their time surfing decide they can also take market share from actual board makers, it's grotesque greed and insulting to those who have devoted their lives to being legitimate board makers. I think the term professional surfer, it's an oxymoron.
Yeah, definitely. And truth and integrity is something that I think we will discuss during the interview. But my personal addiction is about surfboards. I'm not the only one. So anyway, I like to know from you what was the first surfboard that you ever shaped.
Yeah, I do remember that. I had this beautiful Greek eliminator that my parents had bought me when I was just a kid. It was moving from longboards to shorter boards. And really quickly, longboards started to not be the fashion. So I took this beautiful Greek eliminator and stripped the glass off it and tried to make it into one of those Wayne Lynch evolution style mini longboards. Then I glassed it burgundy on the bottom and clear on the deck, and it was super ugly. And it was a terrible hack job. But it's funny, somehow even really bad boards can still work okay if some of the basics are there.
Definitely, definitely. So it's so important. And would you ever imagine at that time to be considered one of the most legendary shaper?
No, I mean, at that time, all I wanted to do was go surfing. And I only did that first board because I didn't have the money to buy a new board. And that continued to be the case for quite some time. Making boards was just a way to have a new board. and a way for my friends to have a new board. And it gradually became selling them, but pretty much for just the cost of materials. It was just to get enough money to make another board. I didn't even really think of myself as a board maker until I got the job at Surfline Hawaii. And when I got that job, I finally started to realize that I really did love making them. And it started to become a life, kind of a life job. And now, many years later, I don't spend any time thinking about image or legacy. I do care a lot about trying to be honorable. If I do happen to think about things like accomplishments, I'm often more inclined to think about the times I fell short in what I wanted to be. And on the good side, I think about times I've spent with really great friends surfing incredible, uncrowded waves. But when I see people with big egos, it looks so obvious and so obnoxious. So I try not to think about those kind of things, and I just try to let the work speak for itself, for better or for worse. I've never I've never tried or wanted to be better than anybody else. To me, being competitive is a really bad energy, and it doesn't interest me at all. Then other things have happened along the way in life that kind of keep you grounded. For example, I've had a lot of good feedback from friends and guys who ride my boards, but I've really almost never had any support from the surf industry. I've been loyal to some people who were not really similarly inclined when I needed them. If you pay attention in life, you can get a good read on your value. And we have the chance to see these things in a negative or positive way. I hope it doesn't sound negative because to me, I see all this in a positive way. An accurate realization can give you a liberating freedom to do and say whatever you feel without concern for repercussions. It can help you be more independent and realize that you really don't need that much to be happy. Words like legend are part of our culture of self-promotion, and it's such an overused word. It hardly has any meaning anymore, anyways.
Definitely.
So,
I see your point. I see your point. But nevertheless, you have a huge career, more than 50 years of career shaping surfboards. So, in your opinion, what was the defining moment of this career?
hmm, it's a nice segue out of the negativity. Yeah, 55 years of doing something is a long time. It's impossible to reduce that to any one moment. It's been a lifetime of continuing to learn and hopefully sharing. But there have been some highlights. I must admit, I did love the time I got to spend with Danny Callahan, the co-founder of Plastic Fantastic Surfboards. That was when I was first starting out. And I never really understood why he decided to help me so much. But Danny knew Brewer and Mike Diffenderfer really well. And I think more than anyone, he encompassed the best attributes of both of them. And he put those attributes together to form his own beautiful style. So that was really big for me. That kind of took me from being a total hack into being a respectable beginner shaper. And he taught me a lot, and he showed me a bunch of tools that he had made himself. And I remember he said something to me. He said, there's guys out there that aren't that good at finishing boards, and they just focus on functionality. And then there's other guys that are real artistic and they do beautiful things, but their boards aren't that functional. He said, to be good, you need to do something that's for sure first functional, but then take it to the next level and try to make it something beautiful too. I love that about him. Later on, he went on to make furniture, and the furniture he made was just spectacular.
Okay.
And then next probably would be the times I've been able to work with Jeff Hackman, which even continue today. That was an incredible learning experience, and it developed into a really nice friendship. And then that took us into the formation of Quicksilver US. Working with Jeff was, that would be like taking me from that level of beginner, that took me to a completely different level. And that was super important in my life, and it still is. It's, there's nothing better than the only thing better than a great friendship, I think, is a great friendship that lasts a long time. And then probably the next thing that was really somehow important to me anyways was getting Quicksilver started in Hawaii when it was almost an impossibility, because at the time Hawaiians really hated Australians. And those short scallop shorts were so feminine looking and so opposite of what people in Hawaii like. So growing it from nothing into being the most dominant brand in Hawaii, when Hawaii was the most important place in the surfing world, that's kind of something that nobody else seems to remember, but I know what it took to make that happen and how it happened. And then probably the next thing would be was really a feeling of accomplishment when I reached a level where my boards that I made for Lightning Bolt finally sold for as much as Jerry's and BK's and Reno's. That was a point I'd never, ever in my wildest dreams ever imagined reaching. That was quite a nice time. Each one of these phases, I could really spend a nauseating amount of time elaborating on them, but I won't bore you with all the gory details. And then finally, another really good lifelong friend like Jeff is Charlie Smith. While Jeff was kind of the king, Jeff and BK were kind of the kings of Sunset, well, Reno too. I mean, but Charlie Smith was, he was like the king of Haleiwa for, I don't know, at least 15 years. I mean, you just ask anybody, he just was incredible at Haleiwa, and that was where he lived. So we've been friends for all that time. I used to make his boards. Then we kind of made boards together, and he's made me some boards, and we've worked on making some blanks together. Just a great surfer, a great shaper, and a great person. So the times we've spent together have also been a really meaningful part of my life.
Wow, thank you for sharing. In effect, it's true. I believe you have a lot of stories about well, all you said. In effect, I wouldn't be able to select one of the topics because are all super interesting. I hope during the interview we're gonna talk about some of them. But going back on shaping, even if now this question might not be that interesting like the stories that you were about to tell us. Nevertheless, what is the most important thing in shaping, in your opinion?
Well, I think, probably, again, everybody would give you a different answer. But for me, I had kind of an unusual experience as a kid. I got to grow up around really, really fast boats as a really young kid. In our family, we had a boat that went 90 miles an hour when I was about 12 years old. And I think, what is that? That's like, what, 140 or something like that, 140 kilometers per hour, maybe a little more. And when you're going that fast over the water, you learn a lot about water flow. like the acceleration and the deceleration is extreme. When you're going 90 miles an hour in a boat and you let your foot off of the accelerator, the drag shoves you forward really fast. These kind of fast boats, they have these things called cavitation plates, and they're kind of similar to rocker on a surfboard. So when you're going really, if you want a really stable ride, but you're not going to go that fast, you keep the cavitation plate down. It's kind of like a flap on an airplane. You know, on the wings when the flap, you know, they lower the flap so they can land.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Okay.
So at at high speed, just one click on the cavitation plate can turn a stable ride into something uncontrollable without almost any contact with the water. Or if you put the plate way down, it can have so much drag that, you know, it probably take the boat from something really fast into something not that fast. If you put a channel bottom boat into a turn at really high speeds, it has a completely different grip factor than a flat bottom boat. And it's the same thing with chop. A drag hydro, for example, that's probably the most similar hull to a concave bottom surfboard. It's probably the fastest hull on flat water. But if you put it out in the ocean in the waves, you can't go faster than like 5 or 10 miles an hour. If you look at all the hull designs on open ocean race boats, you can learn a lot about water flow and, you know, what hull shapes respond to swell and chop and how different they all are. So having kind of that exposure before I even got into surfing, that got somehow printed back in my mind. So when I started to learn about surfboards and water flow and hull designs, I had this frame of reference that was incredibly helpful. Not to mention what an exciting time to be a kid and you know, get to do stuff like that. But that was just kind of that was something I think really helped me. That it didn't help me directly, but it kind of helped me indirectly. But I think shaping is, if you take away those kind of individual experiences, it's just like anything else. If you want to be good at something, the first ingredient you need is you need to love what you do. And the second ingredient is you just practice. It's really simple. If you love what you do and you practice a lot, eventually you're going to get better. And, you know, some people have more affinity for working with their hands than others. Some don't really have, you know, aren't very good with their hands to begin with. But enough practice can equalize these things. So if you're dedicated and you love what you do, you're going to get better.
Definitely, but I have maybe a question that is a bit a controversy. But today, in the industry of today of shipping surfboards, there are actually a lot of boards that are produced without even shipping, touching them, which is kind of crazy in my opinion. But in your opinion, this is affecting the industry, the surfboard industry, or this is just addressing a new kind of clientele, being surf very popular nowadays, even more than the past?
That is a really good question. You know, to me, that's a question of values. And to me, the responsibility lies with both the board makers and the board buyers. The fact that most board makers have succumbed to the temptation of using the computer to do their boards instead of actually shaping them, it results in the necessity to produce and sell mass amounts of boards to cover the costs of the now thicker blanks, the cost of the computer cutter guy, and the cost for the person who rubs the cutter lines off the computer shapes. The only way they can make that business viable is with volume. So, yeah, like you say, the computer board makers, oftentimes they don't even touch the boards. You contrast that with the way things were, and before this dilution of values, surfers would never buy anything that wasn't made by a real shaper's hands. You would get shunned out of the water for showing up with something like that. So, right now, in my opinion, I'm not saying this is everybody's opinion, but right now, to me, the surfboard industry is having big problems in general. I think most people would agree with that. Uh, the reason why maybe not everybody would agree, but to me, it's because the board makers took the lazy way out by having computers make their boards for them. And once this started happening, it brought in many, many new business minded wannabe board maker folks who don't need to know anything except how to copy a computer file to make a reasonably okay board. If you consider all the makers having to do much more volume, then you end up with thousands of boards we really didn't need. And that's, to me, why there's this big slowdown now, why everybody's, struggling. And, this, not only that, but then the thicker blanks that we have to have, they translate into much more toxic waste being produced and rapidly discarded, because to use the computer machine to cut it, to be able to make a variety of designs off of this one blank, they got to make the blank thicker. That just gets thrown right away on very few boards are going to do what Clark Foam used to do, which was Gordon Clark used to call it close tolerance blanks. He would try to make the blanks as close to the finished shape as he could, so there wouldn't be any more waste. We've kind of gone to the opposite now. So this kind of dilution of values subscribed to by the board makers and the board buyers has kind of also led to much more acceptance of the molded pop-out boards from Asia or wherever. Nothing against Asia. A lot of my friends are Asian. It's just that's where a lot of the pop-out boards come from. And then the rubber top boards, which are just ridiculous, those are being made by the thousands and they're flooding the market and the landfill. So, that the board makers are now having a massive slowdown in their orders, it shouldn't come as any surprise. They did it to themselves by throwing away the only thing that made them unique and indispensable. Now we don't really even need shapers. And meanwhile, the surf lineups are impossibly crowded, in part because all the supposed board makers need to do this crazy amount of volume to earn the same amount of money they could make by hand shaping far fewer boards. So once again, greed being at the core of these decisions. If you value having an industry that honors handcrafted products, then you don't ride computer-made boards, and you don't buy molded pop-outs, and you don't buy cheap rubber top boards, no matter what rodeo clown is riding or promoting them, trying to make some kind of idiot statement. If you don't care about these things, as most surfers nowadays seem not to, then you just follow the herd and ride whatever's being promoted the most. But to me, it's easy to see where we went wrong. Surfers used to be individuals, and that included having certain values. Now everyone surfs the same, wants to use the same thing the other guy's riding. Today, it's all about mass marketing, which makes the surf way more crowded. And just finally, a named model is just another word for not custom.
Yeah.
And anyone who talks to you in terms of leaders is telling you that your board was made by a computer. whatever, personally, I'm fine. I'm happy. I still enjoy what I do. I never needed to sell a lot of boards. I still don't need to sell a lot of boards, so I'm fine. I feel bad for the kids that are coming up that maybe could have had a really fun job because that job's not going to be there. It's
In
choices.
in effect, I think there are still like even some young shaper that are still doing the job and shaping fully and shaping, and that's craftsmanship. That's art form. I totally agree with you that the industry is going in in some weird places, let's say. But I think we will all have the need of shaper. First of all, because it's a craft, it's a profession that needs to be protected and needs to be regarded, not by the industry itself, or at least in my idea, but by the surfers. Because a surfer cannot exist. I mean, can exist, but it's better if there is like a surfer and a shaper together. And the history of surf tell us amazing stories when surfers and shaper got together and they improve and they create innovation, they create better board, and in order to surf better, to win, or just to enjoy. And I use this as let's say opening for my next question, because there is like the relationship between a shaper and a surfer that I said, in my opinion, is super important. But in your opinion, this relationship is allowing the board to be better than just a standard one, to perform better?
Yeah, that's a question that could be answered a lot of different ways. But before I answer that, I just want to say one thing about what you just said, and I think that was really. I'm really happy that you said that because you are right. There was this seemed like just almost 100% everybody going to go to the computer, but then somehow little places of people, shapers that were not willing to do it. They started to emerge, and you're right. There is a little bit of a thing now about some shapers are hand shaping, and that is really encouraging. I'm so happy when I see a young person who could take the easy way out
Yeah.
and decide not to, and think, I want to do something authentic. I don't want to just take the easy, cheap, fast, lazy way out. I really want to do something authentic and genuine. So I'm so happy that you said that because there is some hope.
Yes.
But
Yes.
anyways, surfer shaper thing, yeah, that's been a beautiful thing for a long time. There's been a lot of historical collaborations that were really, really beautiful. So, do I think it makes the boards better? Yes. In general, I think you can surely say that, but it depends on what kind of surfer you're working with too. And that, if you're working with a really good surfer who knows a lot about surfboard design and who shares the same beliefs about what causes what, it's a different process than if you're working with someone who knows what they want, but really doesn't know about surfboard design. It begins with kind of working out that kind of communication to develop some kind of baseline of understandings. After that, after you kind of figure out each other a little bit, then I think it really helps to see the boards they've been riding and whatever they like about them and even what they don't like about them. And then personally, I try and I try to do this and I like to do this. I try to do the outline with the guy getting the board. I try to have him there and do the outline together. And when you do that, by the time you've kind of done these things, you should be starting to get a little bit of an idea of what that guy's looking for. And so then I'll like rough out the board and try to have them come back and see it when it's about halfway done and give more feedback. By starting way outside the parameters of the end goal, we have plenty of room to make modifications along the way. So when you're working with a really good surfer and you take the time to involve them in the process, I won't say that the boards are better. I mean, your question is, does it make boards better? I won't say it makes the board better. I would say it makes the board better for that guy.
Okay.
Because when you're working with guys at a pretty high level, they need something that fits them. They need something that's going to work for what they want it for. It's kind of like a fit. You need to make something that fits them. They're like clothes, right? You can't just give them any kind of clothes. You need to make it so it fits them well. So having them get involved to me is how you get them what they want. In terms of whether a board is better or not, just in talking about your boards in general, I think that's just kind of like anything, how much time and care you put into it. You can make a board that's for nobody, but still put your heart and soul into it and make something really beautiful that if the right guy finds it, he's going to think that board's pretty great. So, there's kind of a couple things you're talking about. One is just boards in general, and the other one is just how this surfer shaper thing works, at least for me. And so by starting way outside the parameters, we have a lot of room for the surfer to say, "Oh yeah, I didn't think it was going to look like that," or "Oh yeah, that looks good. Keep going." You have a lot of chances to keep modifying. So almost every board I make, it goes through at least 3 outline changes to get to the final result. So like when you bring in the outline each time, you also get another chance to redo the rails. Because like when you're hand shaping, you don't have that luxury of the computer just doing it for you and having both rails be the same. It's a process of trying to put in the crown and the deck and get the rails right. And more often than not, the rails are going to be one side's going to be a little different than the other. And some people would say, yeah, well, that's why the computer is so great. And I would say, yeah, okay, fine. In one sense, you have so-called perfection. On the other hand, you have something that's original and unique.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know I like original and unique better, but but as you're going along, if one of the rails gets more pinched and the other one's more boxy, and the guy wants one that's more boxy, if you started right on the outline where you want to finish, when you go to redo the outline, you're gonna go under if you don't have extra. And if you have extra, you can fix the rails. Each time you bring the outline in and you get a chance to redo the rails, you get way closer to something really good. Your variables become smaller and smaller so that by the time you're doing the third outline, the rails should be really good. The crown off the deck should be good. The bottom edge should be good. It takes a lot more time, but in a way, it makes it easier to do these extra steps. If you try to hit your end goal on the first take, I can almost guarantee something will be off. There's just too many variables that all need to integrate well. And then finally, at the end, I always try to have the guy come back and see the board at the end, because I can't even tell you how many times I've had a guy get his board and come back later and say, "Oh, I wish we'd done this." And it's taught me that 5 minutes or 30 minutes more in the shaping room might be the difference between the guy liking his board and wishing he'd get another one.
Mm.
So if you bring them back at the end and you have them hold it, feel the rails, and look at it from a bunch of different angles and do little tweaks, I think that you increase your chances of having that surfer feel like they got a board really made for them. So not every surfer wants, is dedicated enough to want to do that. It depends, if you're working with somebody that will stick by you and go through a few boards with you doing that method. I think by about the third board, pretty much that surfer will be starting to love every board from then on after.
Yeah, I think so. And what I was thinking while you were talking is the word patience and dedication, because there is the surfer that wants to go to surf. We all want to go to surf as soon as possible. This is for sure. We want to go in the water, but they need to have the patience of waiting for their surfboard, right?
That's a problem. You're right. That's a problem.
Yeah. And the other word is dedication, because at the same time, you have the shaper that puts time and effort to make a board for the surfer. So not for like everyone, but for that specific surfer. And as well, like the dedication of getting something from the shaper that might not be maybe perfect at first, but is a journey towards perfection, even if we all know that the perfect board doesn't exist. Maybe, but who knows? Maybe is the one day is a perfect board for us, in effect, not for everybody. And when you're shipping boards for the surfers, I mean, you have seen, I guess, an amount of amazing surfers contacting and connecting with you. What is the key thing that you need to know about a surfer that allows you to perform better your job as a shaper?
I think everything that you would probably think would be important. I bet most people could imagine these things, like how long has that person been surfing? What kind of boards have they been riding? What kind of waves do they want the board for? How much do they weigh? What kind of surfing do they want to do? Relaxed and stylish or acrobatic? That can be a completely different board.
Yeah.
Trying to get to know their temperament. Are they willing to work with you on more than one board to get things dialed in? Or will they just get one board from you? Will they be able to give you authentic and honest feedback for future boards? Because that sounds like something that's just like, of course, everybody would. But the funny thing is, not everybody does, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They're going to say, oh, yeah, the board is really great, but then you're never going to see them riding it, right? You're going to be like, oh, okay.
Even shapers are crying sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's really personal, Imagine, you spend all this time making something, you put your heart and your soul into it, and the guy doesn't like it, I mean, it hurts. And the guy, mostly I make boards for friends, people that I know and like. So they know that you're this way, so they don't want to just like hurt you if they don't have to. So, but to be good on both sides, the surfer and the shaper part, you just have to be honest.
Yes,
and that's something I always loved about Jeff. Jeff is like the nicest guy in the world, but he never holds back from telling you when he doesn't like his board. Wow. It can be severe. And he doesn't ever say it in a mean way, he doesn't have a mean bone in his body, but he also will never sugarcoat it and say, "Oh, I like it," when he doesn't.
Good, good. That's a good starting point for a good relationship, honest one. But please tell me a secret. How did you learn to be such a versatile shaper? Where? What have you learned?
That's a really good word. I love that word, versatile. I hope I'm that. I don't know if I am, but that comes back to Jeff Hackman again.
Okay.
When I first started working with Jeff, I knew, I kind of knew the basics of making a board. Just by following what was already in the blank. I think a lot of people still just do that. They think the blank is kind of basically right, so they just skin it down and just sort of follow the blank. But boy, there's a whole lot more to it than that. And way, way, way back when I was just starting and I got together with Jeff, he wanted things that didn't exist in the blanks as they would come from Clark Foam. I had to right away, I had to start ordering oversized blanks.
Huh.
And I would have to cut in the rocker myself and then thin out the foil, from a super thick piece of foam. It was, like I was talking about earlier, it wasn't very environmentally friendly, but we weren't doing thousands of them, right? We were just doing one by one. And again, he learned he started surfing at such a young age, and he was with the best board makers, and he grew up through the evolution of board design. So I don't know anybody who doesn't really shape who knows as much about design as Jeff does. So I had to learn not only all of the outline and rocker numbers that he wanted, but also where the rocker breaks occurred. I don't know if everybody knows what rocker breaks are, but that's like so important. For example, like you can ask for 6 inches of nose rocker on an 8-foot semi gun. Most people wouldn't even know to ask that, but if you did know that if you thought that was what was going to be good for you, that doesn't say anything about how it goes from 0 in the middle of the board to 6 inches at the tip. That curve line is not a steady curve. It runs more straight for a specified area and then curves more as it gets closer to the tip. And the same thing happens with the tail rocker. So learning how and where to place those rocker brakes is one of the most important parts of a good board. And it took me a lot of boards to finally get ones that Jeff liked that part of. When the blank doesn't, it's very unlikely that the blank is going to come with the way a particular person is going to want it. Any good shaper needs to be able to modify blank rockers, and you can order them glued differently, but that's still not enough. So finally starting to get ones that Jeff liked really helped for all the other guys that I ended up making boards for. They got the benefit of his knowledge and his and my experimentation. By the time the way that went was that everybody, Jeff was kind of the guy at Sunsets, and so all those really good guys were always watching him and what he was writing. So they started coming to me after they saw Jeff on my boards, and they kind of got the benefit of his knowledge. So versatility, I think it comes from being comfortable with and able to see and do the board in component parts that eventually will blend together. It comes from not being afraid to change only certain parts of the board while leaving other parts as they were. this notion of doing one flowing pass after another, it sort of omits the small details that can make a board great. And like I say, Jeff knew all these things from such a young age, and he was so generous to share this knowledge with me while we worked together. I'm still learning things from him today.
Fantastic. But I mean, it's not the first time during the interview that we talk about Jeff Ackman, and definitely is a dear friend of yours. And as you said a few seconds ago, he's a very straightforward guy. So he tells you what is wrong, what is right, and doesn't hold back. So that's an amazing thing. And of course, I guess from of course his experience, and he gave a lot to you. But since I know that you have some stories and a lot of surfers that you met along the way, was there one surfer that particularly helped you to shape better your surfboards, and you helped him to surf better in his surf, being a competitive surfer, being like let's say surfing in private life? So was there one particular surfer that comes up to your mind?
Well, that's for sure, Jeff. Without Jeff, I would have never had any of those other great surfers, really, because he was so far ahead. When I got to start working with him, he was so far ahead that everybody was following him. At least for Sunset. I mean, of course you can't say enough about what Jerry was doing at Pipeline, and Jerry's boards for Pipeline, and BK and Reno were making beautiful boards too. So it was just, for me, working with Jeff made me get better so much faster than I ever would have. And I think even with, no matter how much time it took, I don't think I would have become, it wouldn't have been as good. And Charlie Smith too. Charlie Smith from a little bit different point of view, because Jeff was like, he came into surfing so young. So even though he's not that much older than I am in terms of surf experience, he was a lot more than I was. Whereas Charlie and we were kind of more like, I won't say equals, because Charlie was a way better surfer than I was, but we were kind of equals because before he started making boards as much, maybe I was a little better at boards and he was a little bit better at surfing. So we had that intersection too. And I think we both grew a lot together in that way. He used to come up and just spend hours watching me make his boards. And I never could understand why he would, when he surfed so good, how he could spend hours just watching me make his boards. And then when he started to make boards himself, I totally understood. He got good at it really fast. And he was such a great surfer that not only did he get good at shaping, but he got really good at just that thing between like knowing what works, being a good craftsman. Okay, that's good. There's a lot of people that know how to make a beautiful board, and then being a great surfer, that's really great. We all love watching a great surfer, but the surfer shaper guys, the really good ones, that's kind of another level, I think, anyways. So Charlie was that. He was never. He's not a guy who guesses or supposes, right? He knows what he's doing because he's writing it. So I'd say, well, Jerry too. I mean, I was lucky. I got to work with Jerry quite a bit too. So, I mean, the list is just endless of all the guys who have helped me
Sure.
and who I've learned from. I learned a huge amount from Brewer because Jeff was a Brewer guy before I got him. So, all that knowledge coming through Jeff was Jeff working with Brewer. So, there's a whole lot of pollination that goes on. So I don't know. Yeah, I've been lucky. I had some really good friends along the way that were board makers and great surfers.
I'm
And
sure. I'm sure there are plenty of names, and as well beyond also the Jerry Lopez and the Lightning Bolt experience, right? I think you have a lot of Hawaiian history names that help you to improve your boards, isn't it?
yeah, there's a lot of it, then if you just talk about experiences, well, it's kind of dangerous to get into this when you start talking about lists because you're going to somehow forget somebody really special. But there's some people that deserve a mention, and I please forgive me, and I apologize for anybody that I forget because after being around this long, you end up meeting quite a few people. But Jerry's brother, like for example, Jerry's brother Victor. God, man, we could spend hours just talking about Victor on all the wonderfully crazy things we've done together. And he's just been a lifelong friend, and we've had so many unbelievable surfs together. And he knows a lot about boards too. And oh God, he's had some of the best Jerry's anybody ever did. So I had the benefit of seeing those. I've been so fortunate to get to go around traveling and making boards. And there's another great friend is this a really great Spanish shaper, Kike Panera. He's just been a wonderful friend. We've done a couple of tag team boards together where each guy gets to go 15 minutes and the other guy, when he comes in, he gets to erase what the other guy just did. That's crazy. You can't have any ego because this great thing you just thought you did, the guy comes in 15 minutes later and he just completely erases it.
Okay.
So those are really fun. And then we've also like gone to some incredible concerts together. And then I had the opportunity to work with this meticulous Japanese shaper, Eiji Takauchi.
Wow.
And, just unbelievable how, just what a great builder he is. And then Tim Stamps in California. I've worked with him several times, and Maurice Cole and Eric Arakawa. They always come over to France, and they're always inspirational. So I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but I've been lucky to be able to work with a lot of great board makers.
Yeah, and I guess they are also your friends, right? They are not just colleagues. They become also good, fun people to hang out with, right?
Thank you for saying that. That to me is the essence of life. You know, it's not about using somebody to get better. It's to share friendship and to drop the ego and to just learn from each other and just be friends doing it.
Exactly. And that comes the fun part, of course, otherwise, like the risk is to take ourselves too seriously, right? And
Yeah.
if you do it with friends, you can transform a nice experience in something more fun and interesting for both parties, right? So
That's so well said. That's a really great comment.
I mean,
Yeah, there's another guy. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What were you going to say?
no, I said among professional people, of course.
Oh, Yeah, no, that was nice what you said. And before we go any further, I just thought of somebody else that I have to mention, and this guy is just amazing too. It's a Maui friend of mine named Ron Suhako, and he specializes in balsa boards. And he's such a humble guy, such a great craftsman, and we've done several balsa guns together. Just an incredibly special person and a really beautiful, beautiful board maker.
Thank you for sharing. I know that this question might sound like choosing from the son or the daughter, who is the best son or the best daughter, but do you have a particular shape of surfboards that you like to shape among others, or for you it's a 360 approach? No matter what comes, you do it with passion and love.
Well, before I answer that, because while you were asking me that question, I was just, I feel so bad if I leave out people that were so special to me.
Of course.
And so let me go back and also give a little bit of credit to the glassers.
Yes.
Because as much as shapers get all the credit, boy, you're nothing without a good glasser.
Definitely.
And so I was lucky. The guy I first started the first when you first we first started this, the guy I mentioned, Bosco Burns, he was like the head glasser at Hobie Surfboards, like in the late 50s and early 60s.
Wow.
Then him and Phil Edwards moved to Hawaii. Bosco was Phil's glasser when Phil did all those Phil Edwards Honolulu boards. And eventually, I don't know the exact details of the story, but I think Phil moved back to California to help Hobie work on the Hobie Cats when those first started. And Bosco stayed in Hawaii. And so Bosco just became a freelance glasser. And, I loved Phil Edwards. I still love Phil Edwards. So I knew who Bosco was. And there became a point in time when I met Bosco and I got to ask him if he would do some glassing for me.
Oh.
So that was huge because not only was he just an incredible glasser, but he was just such a wonderful mentor. He was a really spiritual person in a really unusual way. All those lightning bolts that happened, that a lot of those were him. And he had this one rule. He said, "Okay, I'll do some boards for you, but the only thing is that I don't take orders." And I said, "Oh, well, that's okay. I'm not really the kind of person who orders people around." He said, "No, no, not those kind of orders." He said, "I don't take custom orders on glass jobs."
Okay.
I said, "Oh, okay." And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, "Oh, I guess I'm going to get all clear, sand finished." And it was just the opposite. Every single board he did was like an art piece. Every single board he did was different. He never did the same thing twice. He was just crazy. Like when he said, "I don't take orders," that meant you're not going to interfere in my creativity.
Okay. Okay.
And so he could only do 3 a week. So when I was really younger and could do more, I needed to do more. And so I had a really good friend named Steve Cranston who did like the majority of all the boards. He was doing it how most glassers do it. He had a kind of a production system. He did maybe 10 a week or something. So he wasn't a huge glass shop. He was still a custom shop, but he did the bulk of the work for me. And so between Bosco and Steve, they always made me look better, and they both taught me a lot about life.
And Fabrice Bland, he did some great work too for us.
And then just along the way, I got to work with this guy, Doug Fletcher in Santa Cruz, total master. All the guys in Japan, Masa Ueda's shop, he has like an 8-person crew, just fantastic craftsmen. Waterman's Guild, just they just do excellent work. Dave Gott did some great work for me too. And now I got kind of a rotating cast: Maxime Bade, Kello Boris, Albrado Cavonius, Jay Guerra, Andres Martinez, Thomas Della Pina, and Xavier and Charlie at Surf Odyssey. So, the list just go on and on. The longer you do this, the more you get lucky to work with exceptional people.
And most recently, Jeff and I just had 2 boards glassed by Tristan and Nicholas at Fantastic Acid and Atlantic Vibrations. And just when you thought it can't get any better, wow, those guys were just exceptional.
Wow.
So I'm sorry,
No, but
I took too long. And
every time you answer to a question, I'm totally silent because I'm contemplating, like a lot of not only history of surfing, because you are saying some of the most important names, but also your history, and among them, among other things, we go from Japan to Hawaii to Europe to USA. So it's kind of a journey through the world. So it's amazing, and across the world, not through the world, across the world. And so it's fantastic, So sometimes I'm losing myself in the thoughts.
Oh, thanks. Sorry to be so long-winded.
No, I love it. I love it. I'm sure the listener will love it too, and it's such a great opportunity to have this interview and to talk about. In effect, you were saying about the glassers. Now I have done, let's say, over 150 interviews for the podcast, and maybe a third with shapers from all over the world. But none of them mentioned the glassers, which is a very interesting point, because without glassing, some of them, they do glassing by themselves, okay?
Right.
It's fine, but it's a very, very important job, actually a crucial one, Without that, there is no surfboard as well. So I'm very happy we spend some time discussing about them and naming some. So going back to the surfboards and my very, very difficult question, is there a particular shape you like the most than the other, or you love all of them?
I just love making surfboards. So kind of all of them, I don't believe in jet skis and gasoline fumes and bow wakes in the surf lineup. I think it's so obnoxious. So I don't make tow boards. And similarly, I find it just so dreadful, the paddle boards, guys, riding these oversized paddle boards and taking all the waves. It's just it's just the scourge. So I don't make those. But any real surfboard, an actual surfboard, I love them all. I love all the tails. I love all the designs. I think that's what's interesting about it is you can never, and it's always changing. So you're never going to know it all. You're never going to be the guy who says, "Okay, I'm there." You're never there. You're just on the journey. And personally, I kind of always have felt like I'm just a beginner. I'm just learning along the way. And so for me, that's what keeps it fun. But if I guess if I had to say what I think I feel more natural and better at, it's probably semi guns and guns.
Okay.
I think the really small short boards, they're actually more challenging for me than guns. I don't know why. I think just because I did so many guns over the years and I never really focused on these tiny little boards.
Okay.
I know they have their place, but and I like doing them, but and longboards and mini longboards, they're kind of more like semi guns or guns, so those are pretty easy too.
And at the beginning of the interview, we were talking about young upcoming shapers that are shaping by hand all of their boards, and this is a very promising thing for the future, to keep the craftsmanship, to keep the art, and to keep the culture of hand shaping board. What is the suggestion that we would give to a young shaper today?
Well, this is just immediate, comes to mind. Don't use the computer to shape your boards.
Yes.
And if you want to become a shaper to make money, don't become a shaper. And if you want to be famous or feel self-important, don't become a shaper.
Okay.
If you love surfing and you love making boards, then you can have a really nice life, but one without very much money. That's what I would say. That would be my warning to a young guy.
Crystal clear. I think it's crystal clear now. After all these questions, I think the shepherds that are listening to us, they would agree totally with you. And is there, talking about young shaper again, is there a young shaper that you really admire today?
Yeah, actually, there is. It's a really good friend of mine. His name is Massimo Tavani, and he makes Tabarez surfboards. And maybe not that many people have heard of him, but he's a really interesting guy and a really wonderful guy. When I first met Massimo, I couldn't believe the depth of his knowledge on the history of surfboards. He didn't make them, he didn't know how to make them, but he knew every board maker. And I think him and his Italian friends, they must spend enormous amount of time studying boards because they all seem to know much more about what is available on the market than I do. He loves surfing and he loves surfboards. So, and I saw right away he had a really good eye for looking at boards. So I was super surprised he hadn't already gone into making boards because his love for the whole thing was just totally full on. And so I told him, I said, "Oh, I'm pretty sure you could be good at doing this." And he was so surprised, he's like, well, I've never thought about it. And so I said, yeah, I think you could be good at this. You should do it.
Nice.
So we started and we worked together a lot, like all of us. He wasn't very good at it to begin with, but that extra amount of love made him persevere through that period when you're still learning the techniques, but the boards aren't coming out as great as your mind can see them. That's really frustrating and can be really discouraging, but he kept going. And little by little, he's now become really good at it. And it's so rewarding to see someone who loves surfing and boards that much kind of go into this part of it. And what's also really nice is that in Italy, handmade products are super valued and appreciated as something precious. They've already in all other aspects of business and stuff, they've already been down this road of, prefab manufactured versus handmade. And they totally get it. In all my experience in Italy, I found that all over the place, a total understanding of and value and appreciation for handmade products. So Massimo has no inclination at all to have a computer shape his board. He's only doing it because he loves it, and as opposed to being opportunistic. So yeah, I love that guy, and I love what he's doing.
Fantastic. So, first of all, thank you for selecting an Italian shaper. Because
well, it really wasn't, I didn't mean it to turn out that way. It's just somebody I've been working with a lot over these past few years. And it just is what it is.
And when you were talking about Italy, I think, like us Italian, we are used to living nearby masterpieces, from the Roman times into the Renaissance, painters, buildings, artwork of any kind, right? So I guess there is inside us an inner love for what is handmade. And so that maybe can translate also in surfboards and shape surfboards. And maybe a bit also like the Japanese, we really appreciate what is the dedication and the time that a shaper that shapes by hand puts in his work. So I guess there is, in my opinion, being Italian, I can say definitely I see something resonating, So
that's so nice. I love hearing what you just said.
Thank you. Well, I think is real. I think is really real. So today you are in the Alps of France. So enjoying, I'm sure. What are your plans for the future years, months to come?
Yeah, I'm kind of enjoying this kind of different things. I spent so long in Hawaii, and I still love Hawaii, but I've had skin cancer like 7 times. And what's that old saying? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right?
Yeah.
So, and my Bosco died of skin cancer. That's not the way I want to die. So at some point, living in the tropics it's pretty severe on your skin. So I still want to be in Hawaii, but right now I'm just really enjoying being in cooler climates. The planet's burning up.
Yeah.
So I find myself gravitating more toward cooler climates. And yeah, like you said, January, and I'm up in the Alps. It's like, God, it's just awesome.
Yeah.
So that's be my hope is to keep traveling more and ski and snowboard in as many great places in Europe as I can in the next, couple years. That I want to keep doing boards, and I'll be around the beach and stuff, but
Nice.
my fantasy is just kind of experience these great places.
Yeah, definitely. This is a great plan. So we're gonna finish this interview that I really love, and as you said at the beginning, it could last forever because there are so many things to be said and to discuss and to go more in depth. But nevertheless, the podcast finishes always with a short Q&A session. So please answer the first thing that comes up to your mind. So, first question, the best surfboard that you ever rode?
Okay, first thing is Charlie Smith 7.2 reverse V, super light glass job. Yeah, Charlie made me that as an experimental board, and wow, was it ever good. Then I also had, now coming also in my mind is 7.0 Jerry that I bought secondhand. I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw it somewhere in a shop, and I looked at it and I thought, oh, I could ride that. And, oh, that was such a great board. And then of the ones I made, maybe like 7.4. I remember this board I made for Bruce Raymond, and I ended up riding it a lot, and I really, really liked that board. And then I finally gave it to Jock Sutherland. Boy, there's a lot of boards. I can't believe I just thought of those three, but were three good ones.
I think so. I think definitely. Your favorite shaper from your side, I mean, is a very important answer.
Yeah, it has to be Danny Callahan. I mean, anybody would say Brewer. I mean, if your question was the most important shaper who ever lived, of course it's Brewer. But my favorite shaper was Danny Callahan.
Okay. Personal question: your favorite song?
Oh, that's hard. I love music. That's hard to narrow it down. There's a song by the Rolling Stones called "Jump on Top of Me." If you haven't heard that, you have to hear it. That's a really good song.
Did you listen to the new record of Rolling Stones?
Oh yeah, I thought it was fantastic.
Nice, it's nice. I like it.
Yeah, personally, I thought it was very Rolling Stones, and they're not young anymore either, and I'm not young, so of course it's so inspiring when you see the people who inspired you keep going. It makes you feel like you want to keep going. And,
of course.
Just as a little side note, I remember I read this interview with Keith Richards, and the interviewer said, after doing this for so long, aren't you tired of it? Aren't you tired? And he said, are you kidding?
Mm-hmm.
It's more fun now than it ever was, because we all know that any show might be our last one.
Exactly.
So every show we do now is like super fun. And so
I think he was referring to the fact that Rolling Stones are like playing concert live, and since maybe 50 years, there is always the legend that this is the last show, right? So 50 years ago, maybe people did not believe that. Today, maybe could be the last one. We hope not.
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen that? There's a really funny Willie Nelson joke. And Willie Nelson says, I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's something like, I can't remember. It's something like the young kids, we're worried about the young kids because we're not quite sure what kind of condition they're going to leave the planet in for me and Keith Richards.
Yes.
But anyways, if you haven't heard Jump on Top of Me, that is very nice song. There's two others that come to mind. There's a really great Steely Dan song called I Got the News.
Yes.
It's got a fantastic drum beat. And speaking about Willie's son, Lucas Nelson, has a wonderful song called Four-Letter Word. If you haven't heard that, that's really funny and really good song.
Yes, I know. It's actually he's a great musician too. The son of Willie Nelson. So
oh my God, he's just incredible.
Okay, so I think for the listener, Jump on Top of Me is 1994, right? It was a album Pret-a-Porter.
Okay.
for who remembers or not. Anyway, next question is your favorite surf spot?
That's hard. There's so many good ones. Sanur, Bali.
Okay, but not a bad wave.
Oh my God, it's such a good wave.
I asked you favorite shaper. What about the favorite surfer? Who's in your opinion today?
Wow. Surfing's such a personal thing to me anyways. It's really a reflection of who you are as a person. So for me to appreciate someone surfing, I have to like what they're about. You know, contestants, they seem like wankers. You know, it's like, what are you telling me with your surfing? Do you have grace? Or are you just a self-centered flailer? I can't hardly think of anyone I find having any individual style. They all look the same. No, wait a minute. There's a guy, a French surfer named Anthony Haraway. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. God, he's got such a beautiful, relaxed style, and he's always flowing with the wave. He's just a pleasure to watch, and just what I was saying. You know, he's just a pleasure to be with.
Nice.
There's nothing worse than a guy who's nice on land, but he's a total jerk in the water.
Yes, I agree.
That doesn't work for me.
No, definitely.
You have to be the same. Whatever you are on land, that's what you are. Whatever you are in the water, that's what you are.
I agree. I totally agree with you. Inside, outside the water, perfect gentleman, right? Like in the Navy. Same thing.
Yeah, it should be.
Should be. Yes, it's not a lot like this all the time. And the last question is a little bit unusual. I would like to ask you your best relationship advice.
Oh my God! You're asking the wrong person.
Apologies.
I would say get used to liking being alone. Work on your own karma. So if and when you ever meet someone special, you can treat them well.
Yes, you become better, right?
Own your mistakes and don't be manipulating. If things don't work out, you can still feel okay about yourself.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you so much, Mr. Parrish, for being on the show with me today. It has been great talking with you, and I look forward to talk to you very, very soon, I hope.
Alessandro, you're a total pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed our today's episode. If you want to know more about us, please follow www.thetempleofsurf.com and all our social media. Mahalo!